Working drummer.
Now kick it.
This is the Working Drummer Podcast, serving up perspectives, experiences, and stories from ground-level working pros. Advice, tips, and secrets on how to build a career in the music business.
Hey everybody, this is Matthew Krause, and you are listening to the podcast, Working Drummer. Today I'm very excited to bring you my interview with legendary drummer Eddie Bayers. Eddie is a first-call session drummer and certainly one of the busiest musicians in the world. He's played on hundreds of gold and platinum albums and numerous movie soundtracks. He's received the Academy of Country Music Drummer of the Year Award 14 times. He was put into the honor roll for Modern Drummer magazine for winning the Reader's Poll 5 years consecutively, and Drum magazine named Eddie one of the top 10 session drummers of all time. As always, you can go to workingdrummer.net to find out more about this podcast, see pictures, and find out information about other podcasts we've recorded. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Go to iTunes where you can subscribe to this podcast. While you're in iTunes, leave a comment, rate the podcast. That really helps us out. When you use Instagram, use the hashtag WorkingDrummer. We'll mix that into our social media and share those pictures and comments. So enough of my yakking. Let's get to this conversation with Eddie Bayers.
A demo, a portfolio, whatever you want to call a resume, it doesn't work. It's all about who know you. And in most cases, if it is a live scenario, most of the other guys in that band know somebody. And they will be accorded first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
used to be management would do that, but now the artist depends more on their band that's in place to trust them, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be more sensitive to the chemistry and know that somebody fits in their pocket, and that's important.
Right.
So
when all that traveling and all that time you spend together has to be...
Oh, yeah.
You have to be able to get along.
Well, the other thing to be said is that they're there. The artist likes them, calls that their band, and so anything else that has to be replaced, they pretty much depend on the auditions being governed by the musicians. Now, of course, the artist needs to come in, but the artist is so comfortable with that band that they trust them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we've discussed this off and on over time, just that personality, being able to get along, playing, your abilities as a player being a factor, but not being the thing. But as a studio musician, how does that play? How does that come into play? Because a lot of times personality is important, but sometimes you're not always together, tracking together.
And I think a lot of that deals with if somebody new comes in, one of us know of them, we've heard of them, some of our people that we know in the other facets of, guitar, piano, stuff like that, they're always squawking. They go, man, they had this kid on the blah, 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 and he's really incredible.
Yeah.
Now with me, and I'm sure you would realize too, that works to the fact that I know, but when it gets down to the end of that list from production coordinators, then you might have the opportunity to go, have you tried da-da-da-da, but because in most cases, whoever we are on that list, they will go through first. There might be 5 or 6 of us.
Right.
Like if I can't do it, or if somebody else couldn't do it, they would call me.
Yeah.
And adverse, obviously, if I can't do it, they'll call somebody else. And if he can't do it, then they'll just go down their list.
They go down their list.
Usually somebody is there. So for somebody else to come in, it would have to be something where that person met the writer or somebody like that to be put in place. Where somebody that they hired, as far as musicians, would be able to say, man, I worked with this kid and he was incredible,
Yeah.
So it's just a word of mouth scenario and experience,
It's funny, sometimes you'll get the call and I'll say, well, I'm just happy to be on your list. I can't do it, but I'm glad I was on. I don't even want to know where I am on your list.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
It really doesn't matter.
I'm just happy to be on there.
And in some cases, people have requested somebody, but the project has to be done on that specific time.
Right.
So they're comfortable in going on with approved roster and in their world.
Right.
That they know that in most cases, and I found this out even in my mentoring, that, we all know what to do. There's only 5 beats. And then it's just a matter of performing those beats, you know what I mean, and locking in with the other people who are going to be doing that. But truthfully, those beats work in any tempo.
Yeah.
So I've always been able to, I write it out and I show them, I said, okay, you'll find this one, you'll find this one, you'll find this one.
Yeah.
Now, if it was something, doom, that, I said, in a ballad it'd be doom, 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 and thus it goes on.
Right,
so,
tempo-wise. Yeah. Well, I know it seems that simple. And I agree with you.
No, well, in beat-wise, it is. Mm-hmm. In performance and chemistry, that's a whole different thing on how you feel with the rest of the band or your co-partner on the bass of how that locks in.
Yes.
Because not necessarily you playing that locks in.
Yes.
It can be the right beat.
Yeah.
But what you're listening to and how you're listening to it, as far as click world, where you feel that, the rest of it is how to create in your subliminal that the click is the center of a beat. Doesn't mean you jump on it.
Yeah.
You might want that snare to be milliseconds behind that beat, for more of what Steve Cropper always called the bacon side of the beat,
Okay.
So, there's different feels, and a lot of that has to do with frequenting genre. Whether you're going to listen to R&B, progressive country, traditional country, whether it's going to be metal, anything, but know and listen to that, because that way it's inside of you and you're not going to be trying to manufacture it. You're going to listen to something and understand, why that feel is what it is.
Yeah.
And if that's in your head, then most cases of particular pieces of music, that is a reference for you. If somebody, because I always make a joke when somebody has their chart written out and they say like, a la Keith Urban, I went, oh my God, you mean he converted? Just a joke, But anyway, we know what that means. And they'll say a la Keith Urban, and they might mention a particular song.
Yeah.
And sometimes they play it as an example, which one that they're shooting for.
Okay. And so you have to be able to reference, sometimes if they don't have that material.
If they don't have it and they mention it, then it'd be nice to know that you know what that is.
Yeah. So pulling from different artists and different genre, kind of having a good grip on history.
Yeah. Oh, history is absolutely, to me, important, because if somebody does come up and they go, because like when I did Knopfler's record, we did 2 actually stone country songs, of all things.
Yeah.
And you have to know what that is.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because he knows what it is.
Yes.
And then after that, get up into his world of whatever it is he's going for,
So let me get this straight. You're talking about kind of having an understanding from your vantage point. You're having a good grip of different genres to be able to interpret the feel, where the pocket lies, if you're playing, say, a metal feel.
Yep.
Or an R&B thing. So just take those 2, for example, which seem like polar opposites. But so do you are you pulling from that experience, from your listening experience, your knowledge of history, to determine how you're going to approach your feel that day, that song, or you're like, this is the Eddie Bayers thing. They've hired Eddie Bayers. This is how I'm going to play.
Yeah, I don't know, because we're all influenced. And so like when I first came here, such as you, and all of a sudden it's a culture shock, because I didn't grow up with country music, So with that, one thing I was really on top of is that I wanted to listen to what was there on that transition when Buddy Harman and all those A-Team guys were playing those records. And I wanted to, not as far as condescending, because that's the other side that I try to teach, to say, you can't condescend to a genre because you think, oh man, that's country and that's old country and it's stupid and blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, well,
Yeah.
all I'd ever say is if you get called for a session that needs that and you consider it that way, then call me and I'll do it.
I'll do it. Right.
Yeah.
So being open to all.
Yeah, I think the rest of it becomes subliminal. I think it's a situation of where if you really study and really want to know and figure out why those efforts were so successful, and you study them.
Yeah.
Like all the Buddy Harmon stuff, I studied it, and luckily I was able to be befriended and talk with him about specific things that he did.
Yeah.
Because before we had loops, before we had certain percussion standard, he made up his own. You would always hear things on a record, and I go, what the heck was that? Well, I played the back of a guitar, and I said, what was the most unusual thing that you ever overdubbed on? And he said it was a spare tire. Of course, I made a joke. Was that 4-ply or was that, But that was the thing. He was always thinking to innovate, to add something that wasn't what we would consider standard percussion. Anybody would know what a conga is. Yeah. Now, in my early years, I don't know if I was the first one to start it, but a long, long time ago, I started turning the snares off and playing conga patterns.
Right.
On records.
Yeah.
I did it on Rodney Crowell, Judds, and people like that.
Yeah.
And then I heard it more frequented because it's not so stereotyped as saying, well, it's the feel of something like that, but it's a different timbre, which is, it's really a cool thing to do,
Right,
Yeah.
right. I know sometimes when people want percussion, they don't want a traditional pattern.
Exactly.
They want that tone, they want that, especially with contemporary genres and different things like that. But they need that texture, that frequency.
And I found in country music, not at all did you hear congas or bongos or stuff like that. But when I was doing the hand snare thing, it really fit in with a piece that didn't need to go any bigger,
Yeah.
And it really helped.
I reached out to a handful of friends of mine just to say, hey, I'm going to be talking with Eddie coming up. Any ideas, any input? And I got some great questions. And I was thinking of this question that Lee Kelly wanted me to throw your way.
Yeah,
that's close to what we're talking about right now. And so this is kind of what he says. Well, this is exactly what he says. It's not
exactly.
He says, when laying down a track, is there something about the way you move within the track, even when on a click? Like, I'm trying to explain. I spoke, actually, Lee has been on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Mark Beckett has been on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And maybe one of the things that Mark and I talked about was kind of where 1 is, where 2 is, where 3 is, and where 4 is. Is there, do you ever break it down? Do you have like is there a method to the madness, the feel as far as, because I know Mark talked about, no.
I think we all have performance inside of us.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is our capability of understanding who we're playing with. Now, I try to make an assumption of what I'm hearing collectively. Mm-hmm. So if the click's playing, but I hear specific instruments at a certain place,
like on top or
if it's a keyboard, if it's an electric guitar or acoustic player, very important.
Yes.
I think you have to, and we're really talking milliseconds of difference when it comes to a click.
Yeah.
But I want to listen overall to the feel of how everyone's interpreting that click. Mm-hmm. And I would rather play with the band than jump on that click.
Yeah.
And like I've always said, even with a click, you could do 4 takes to that same click and they'll all be different within fractions.
Yes.
But they'll still feel different because somebody might hit that chorus and feel it differently than they did the one they did the take before. Yeah, but they're not going to be so far off.
Right.
But still, I think overall, in our performances world and how we assess everything that we're playing to, I don't think you can think. Yeah. I don't think it's a thinking thing. And I think if you think, it's going to be noticeable.
Right, you're going to hear it in the performance.
Yeah, and I don't like thinking. I like being able just to perform it. Now, what I will do is that, say, on the first take, I'll come across something on a specific segue feel to get into a specific place, and I'll go, wow, I really like that. So if they do another one, I will retain that because I liked what I did, but it still came out of, spontaneity.
So, and just to finish up what he was saying, and I think you've answered the rest of the question, it was, what are you keying in on during the take to make those slight adjustments and give the track a lift or lay it back, vocals, bass guitar, or everything.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm from what I'm gathering, you're saying there's sometimes certain instruments, it depends on the session, depends on the song. Some things will stand out more than others, or maybe you'll key into something that's important on that song. But you did put some emphasis on the acoustic guitar.
Yes, absolutely.
So could you expound upon that?
Well, the acoustic is more consistent in the feel.
Right.
And you'll hear it in specific acoustic players. We have some great ones.
Yeah.
But that is something you lock into, because I think more than not, people who are doing specific parts are not as consistent in the rhythm as the acoustic player is.
Right.
So with that, I can really hone in on that, and I can kind of tell, obviously, where he's at with that. Now, it could be a mutual respect. Maybe he's wanting to hear me, but I can tell if he is.
Yeah.
And if he's doing that, I hear him lock in with me, because we're the only really consistent thread, where piano players might be playing chords in specific, like stabbing or whatever you want to call it.
Comping rhythms and stuff.
Comping rhythms. And the electric might be doing more of an arpeggiating thing or power chording or whatever. Yeah. But it's not going to be the consistent thread that an acoustic does.
Right.
Because in whatever the piece is, if it starts off smaller and it's finger-picked, then you know the arpeggiation of that, and you can tell. And then when he gets into rhythm, you can tell that. So, in a lot of cases, I like hearing that. And then I think that the other players also lock in, because I know in a lot of people who might say, well, turn up the hi-hat because I want it, and I'll just go, no, I don't think, because not all the time am I going to play the same pattern on a hi-hat, in a specific part of the song. Right. So it might be just quarter notes, and then when it gets to the chorus, I'll do an eighth note pattern or whatever. Yeah. And sometimes I put the little, anything, So I would rather them musically adhere to, again, the acoustic player. Yeah. Because I will lock in with him.
Yeah. I worked with Don in the studio last year, and I wish I could remember the acoustic player that was on the session. Experienced guy. I know you've worked with him many times. He was the savior for me. I had his time and his feel was just glorious. Yeah. And it made the whole session wonderful. And I thought if I could lock in with him and that frequency, and this is the other thing, this is my question to you, is I always thought that not only that you're talking about rhythmic consistency that acoustic, that player brings to the song that you have to, that you want to be in sync with, but also I wonder, is it the frequency as well? Like I feel like whatever pattern I'm playing on the hi-hat or ride, that acoustic guitar is there as well. And it's almost like if those two things are together, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. And again, you don't have to just, as far as what he's playing, because we have a lot of acoustic players that know boom, he knows to do that, but maybe I just want an eighth note through that. But he's doing that, so I don't have to do it. Right. And that, like you said, when you lock in with that and those two become that oneness, it is a beautiful thing, to be able to feel that. Yeah. And I think a lot of our acoustic players are so incredible. They really are. We have some greatest musicians here. Yeah. And
it's pretty amazing. if you don't mind, I'd love to jump back and kind of start and give some background to our listeners on kind of where you're from. Are you from Oakland?
Well, I was born in Maryland. My father was a fighter pilot.
Okay.
So I was born on the naval base there.
Right.
And then from moving around, of course, as most people know, I started off as a classical piano player.
Yes.
So from that, when I came to Nashville, I was in Oakland for a while, and then I came to Nashville, and it was probably late '73, and of course it's hungry and needing work. So I heard about an audition down at the Carousel Club in Printers Alley, and I went down. They had a quartet that played in between the bigger artists, and so there was like 3 or 4 guys in front of me. But anyway, by the end of the audition, this massive man comes up and says, "You got it. You're the guy." And it was Larry London.
Yeah.
And so I got to work with him for a year and a half, and he really was an inspiration. I mean, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
And he was a great mentor. And after that year, I was able to move on and actually pursue more professional drum positions, which I did. I got in a club down on 3rd Avenue called the Backstage, and there was an embedded band there by the owner, Clarence Perry and the Mercy Blues. So I got in with that, also to be able to check out the studio scene. So just, as squat goes in a town, they would say, well, there's a new studio open up and over off of Division Street and everything like that. So, well, I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah.
Well, happenstance is that I walk in the same day that Paul Worley walks in, and he had just gotten out of college. And we walk in together, and both of us pretty much agreed. They said, well, we haven't really got anything going. We said, you don't have to pay us until you can. We just want to experience. And so we did, and we were with them for 8 or 9 years until Paul became such a successful producer that we started our own studio, the Money Pit, and had that for 27 years. And but throughout that process, I did find, because we were frequented on demos.
Yeah.
And as a writer, I was signed to Acuff Rose by Don Gant. He was there. But when Don Gant moved over to Tree, me and Don Cook moved over with him. So I was on the front end, or right in, with some of the greatest writers that Tree ever had. From Sonny Throckmorton, Glenn Martin, Nat Stuckey, Curly Putnam, Bobby Braddock. So I watched that whole evolution as it grew, where they would sign new writers like Ray Van Hoy and other people that came in. So we all knew each other in that growing situation. And what happened in those days was a demo was your best advertising, because at that time, an artist or producer might get that demo and go, man, this thing really feels great. I want that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then you get the call.
Right.
Where today, I think everything is generically pretty much the same. By the time, even our demos sound like the records now.
Yeah, yeah.
By the time our engineering staffs, who are very keen on being able to quantize and do everything they do, put the loops in, everything, that there's really no difference. So there really isn't a detection to be able to say this guy,
Right, that the style maybe doesn't jump out as much.
No, it's not, because, even some of the records I've done, when I get the record back, I went, oh, okay, well, I didn't realize I was so precise, locked in with everything, And so, but I think the bottom line is now the engineers are so educated on audio quantizing, on being able to make that record sound like all the efforts we hear now. And I realize there's a whole situation about they all sound the same, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it like, look, this is the era that we're in.
Yeah.
So those pieces of music, however anybody wants to judge them or not judge them, we have to look at the artists that are making those songs big and why that demographic is frequenting them. Yeah. And I realize we're in pretty much a chant era now, if it says whoa and yeah and all that. Yeah. But people want that, they want to drive to work with it, and they want to work with it. They want to drive home with it. They want to party with it. They want to work out to it. Yeah. So a lot of what we would consider significant song content lyrically is not as important. It is, and some of them will hear that, but I think the truth of that is in what we look at the copyrights that have lasted over 40 years of the songs that still make money.
Right.
Where a lot of these songs are pretty much, they're frequented on the radio, you know them, but you know it's not going to be something you
But in 10 years, you're new.
No, you're not going to see a frequented copyright being able to make that kind of money.
Right. It's interesting. I was talking to a guitar player, a friend of mine, and I said, you know, when I'm coming up with I think this would be a great song to perform live. I think it would go over well. And a lot of times I'm completely wrong about that. That's the thing about Don. He really knows how to read an audience.
Yeah.
And we were having this conversation about musicians that seem to be, we think that this is a great song. Everyone should love this song, but it doesn't always translate.
Well, let me say one thing in that behalf. I think we all do know what a great song is. It may not be what they're looking for now. And if you were to bypass that hierarchy that allows that particular effort to get out, those people would love that song.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the truth, because it's almost like if we look at our political mayhem right now, okay, the bottom line is what is there for us to choose from is chosen by somebody else and delegate counts and everything like that.
Right.
It may not be what we would look for or want, but we're subject to what they come down to after their conventions, everything. Okay, well, here's the person you're going to vote for.
Yeah.
Well, in music, a lot of times that hierarchy has that same capability of being able to allow what comes out of their camps to be able to see that's what you're going to hear on a radio.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean, because when you look at even efforts, say, man, that sold 1 million copies, that sold 2 million. Well, in a country of 330 million people, I promise you we could find a good 2 or 3 million who would really love the songs that you and I say are great.
Yeah.
But we don't have the power to be able to market and promote to those people.
Sure.
You know, and radio's not going to do it because they're still conglomerated into what they choose that is presented to them. They will have to prove it amongst their, whatever you want to call their little bases of testing and stuff like that. But you're only talking about 100 people.
Right.
That's just like polls that are just, you know, give me a break, you know.
Right.
100 people you bring into a room lose their innocent ear because all of a sudden they're empowered.
Yeah.
Oh, I get to choose. Okay.
Right.
You know.
This is serious stuff. This isn't Family Feud.
Yeah, no, I'm going to really, you know, and again, what they're presented.
Right.
What is shown to those people is what is shown after the fact. Then we realize, for anybody who's never got in depth about the legal payola aspect of it, is that once radio would come back and say, no, we really love this record, well, then it comes down to who has the money to be able to run that up a chart. You know, if you're looking at top 20, if you're looking at top 10, everything, you're looking at anything over to $300,000, $400,000.
Yeah.
And that is the truth.
Yeah.
The only thing that can beat that out would be a social media viral, where maybe a group or something just puts something out that all of a sudden achieves millions of views.
Yeah.
Then it kind of is like, oh yeah, well sure, we'll take that on.
So do you think that creates more of a level playing field? The social media, I know that it has.
It does if you have a way of taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
If certain camps have, or artists or bands have an idea that when they film it or whenever they do it, that has that capability of becoming viral. You know, I mean, and again, it comes down to the original or the creativity of that effort that comes out, where obviously if I see something, I'm going to, Mark, you're not, watch this. And you see it, well, you know, and if we all freak out over it, well, you're going to start seeing views. And the truth is, if any group is going to be, or an artist going to be grooved by a label, that is one of the first things the label wants to see is social media.
Yeah.
Because if they see you've already made this headway,
right,
that's important to them.
Sure.
I mean, I know really, obviously there's the showcase. You got to have a showcase.
Right.
If they have the capability of developmental aspect, then they'll take it on and say, yeah, we can really make this happen. In most cases, they can't because they're not going to spend time. They want something already done.
Yeah.
Where they can take their machine and promotion and take it the rest of the way. But the truth is, they're not going to want to spend all that time in breaking it. They want something that's already pretty well broken or has a template that they look at percentage-wise that they go, man, this has already done this.
Right. And has that changed a lot over the decades? Have you seen that? Have you seen labels wanting to spend less time or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We all know, and I'm sure you know, and everyone out there listening knows, people who are incredibly talented and worthy, and we can't figure out why they can't make progress. And it's because, well, we have new A&R departments now. You know, you have The Voice. You have these reality shows. You know, Idol's over now, but there's going to be other formats that come up. Right. Those people I see more frequented from those top 8 people that are going to be more courted by a label because they've already had millions of views.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're not going to, unless it is an embedded management company that has the power and knows, like, let's just take Bob Doyle, for example. Okay, well, everybody knows him from, you know, Garth and Van Perry and all that. Well, if he takes something on, he's going to have the power to be able to go to a label and say, man, I've got this, da-da-da-da. And because of that familiar aspect of it, whoever the head of the label is or anything like that, oh, Bob, man, yeah, well, we're going to go with you because we already know in management world you'll take it because he also has the power to be able to put this artist in front of somebody. Even without a hit record, he can put them on a tour, you know.
So as a drummer, how do we navigate this new world? How do we navigate the way music is produced and marketed? And even if it's maybe not a genre we're completely invested in, how do you adapt to these trends, these changes?
Well, I listen to what it is that I see as the new, so-called new production or anything like that. I get inside of it. I study what's on there. Not study, but I listen to it. And I make sure that I'm equipped with all that can do it.
Can I ask you about recording with an artist like Easton Corbin?
Yeah.
So you've been on 3 of his records, and he's a new artist.
Yeah.
So, for example, what was your approach to that? Was there something special, something different that you did?
No, it's a song.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody pulled out a song, like we did one thing on his newest album that was more of, if you want to call it country hip-hop music, you know, called Yup. It had a loop, and not that he rapped through it, but it had that feel.
Right.
As compared to maybe just a straight-ahead country effort like he sings.
Yes.
So any one of us, you know that if they put that song in front of you, you're already going to know.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, well, we want this, we want that. And that automatically triggers everything in your mind, the song. Plus, they play a demo.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're going from scratch. As in my early years, a lot of the big producers I worked for didn't like that. Brent Mayer would never play a demo. He always played an acoustic version of the song.
Yeah.
So you're not influenced.
Yeah. A lot of people know that you were a piano player, but I mean, why the transition? Had you played drums before?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm like any one of us who would frequent another instrument. You know, maybe you've picked up a guitar before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I own a guitar. That's about it.
Well, there you go. But are you a professional guitar player? Well, that's my point. So during my early years, I would play drums. I was in a band that worked out because the band core had a piano player, B3 player that sang, and the drummer would come out and sing. So it worked out for me. When the drummer would come, I'm going to play. Maybe I didn't play to the capacity of what he could, but I could keep the beat and I could play it.
Yeah.
As when the other guy and the B3 came out, I could play the B3, and so it worked out in that sense. But to be able to get into professional recording, Larry was very mentoring in that respect.
And what was it about you that he saw and said, you know what, you need to be a drummer?
I think because it was a new world, and I wasn't condescending to what I was in. Of course, I was playing mainstream when I was with Larry. Mm-hmm. But all my formal training up to that in classical, and again, not condescending to it, but I was an interpreter. Anybody with the knowledge and the capability of me could put a piece of music in front of you, and we were all going to perform it the same if we really read the music.
Yeah.
So that would be like when I would sit down and I would play, like Ravel or Debussy or Mozart, any one of those. And if I sat down and play it, and somebody would hear you play it and go, my God, Eddie, that's incredible. Well, the first thing I would do is I go, yeah, well, I mean, that's not me.
Right.
I'm performing it. I'm reading anything else that anyone else aside of me would sit down and do the same thing.
It's the classical musician, the way they're trained to interpret
it's an interpretive mode.
On the page.
Yeah, I'm interpretive. It's not creative.
Right.
And if you start creating, then you're going to be judged for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't innovate on what the masters wrote.
Yeah.
Well,
when you A-B that, and piano, drums,
Yeah.
classically trained, to being a studio musician, which involves constant improvisation and ideas and creating, those just seem like completely different worlds. And somehow you've made it really work. Do you think that maybe the fact that you were considered yourself a piano player first, that you were able to just kind of go in and just without any preconceived notions of what a drummer is supposed to do, but just play music?
Yeah, I think there's something embedded in all of us as drummers to be able to realize first that we did have coordination.
Yeah.
We knew how to play all those instruments together.
Yeah.
You had a hi-hat beat, you had a kick drum beat, you had a snare beat, you had tom fill beats. So I think with that, you had to have embedded and coordinating factors.
Yeah.
You can't just sit down to a set of drums, and we all know that even from people that they said, oh man, can I? And then you watch them and you go, wow. Well, then you realize what we, had.
Yeah.
Well, or what we have inside of us.
Yeah.
So I had that.
Okay.
So the rest of it was being able to further that, into hearing a feel of whatever particular music I was going to play and adapt to that.
Yeah.
And say, man, I love that beat. I want to play that.
Yeah.
And so then you would obviously, if you're going to play that, then you would do that. You would just, in a sense, practice.
Well, what did you do from like 1974 until, let's say, the first Dolly Parton session that you did?
Yeah. Well, the great thing was that top 40 band I was in. I was playing every hit record.
Yeah.
Every night for 5 nights a week.
Drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to have to learn the songs and play them,
Yeah.
And they would be everything. Like I said, all the top 10, top 20, top 30 records, and even going back into some of the early years, however that band would want to say, here was a great song, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So by doing that, you have to sit and learn the record. You have to learn the beats of that record.
Yeah.
So in a sense, 5 nights a week,
Right.
I'm doing it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that became automatic. Then when the studio came in with me and Worley, because we were the core of that production company, we got to do the same thing. And the thing is that by getting in the music community and other things, and I still played keyboards and stuff. I played on some stuff for Buddy Killen on B3. He liked the way I played B3.
Yeah.
But drums as well. But what we got to do in there, we did sound alikes with in the production company. We did commercials out to wazoo. I mean, crazy. And then we did specialty projects like for Walt Disney and for National Geographic and stuff. So it was such a diversity in music. And what great was, I met a guy named Stan Shulman who came from New York. He had a record company called Dunes Records. He had two major artists that he had really made big. When he came down here, he temporarily took over MCA, but then as I got to know him, because I was on one of his recordings, and he got to talking, he says, I would really love to involve you in my production stuff. He says, I've been talking to K-Tel. And what people didn't know, you just think of K-Tel where you're just getting sound-alikes. What they started is realizing the 5-year statute of an artist, that if they haven't been signed to that record within 5 years, you could pay them a flat fee and come in and do their record again, and you own the master.
Oh, wow.
That still carries on today. So because of that whole initiation, we did, and the great thing about it was it became a buyout. So my movie credits, as you see, from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you could admit all that came from that catalog because it was the original artist. We would bring in Little Richard and did 21 of his sides. We brought in Strawberry Alarm Clock, Paul Revere and the Raiders. We brought in Sam and Dave. We brought in Johnny Taylor. We brought in Percy Sledge. And we re-recorded those records verbatim. I mean, because we had the original artist, so Paul and I were meticulously getting in to make sure that we honored that record. Obviously, the Sonics were a lot better in that, even in that day.
Sure.
So the records came out with the original artist,
right,
sounding incredible. So the movie companies went, yeah, we want that because all we have to do is pay for it.
Yeah.
So with that, and I think in the latter years in the 70s with Don Gant over Tree became the thing where your name gets out. And also because of some of the artists that I work with there, I got to meet people. And I remember Deborah Allen's record. She said, I want you, blah, blah, blah. But she said, I want Leland Sklar. Nice. So Leland flies in. We become very close, and we still are today.
Yeah.
He was the one, he said, you're going to be getting a call from Mike Post. And I said, wow, you mean like all the Hill Street Blues and everything? He said, yeah, he's going to be producing Dolly Parton's record.
Yeah.
9 to 5. And so that's the kind of thing that word of mouth, and also people who meet you who are your great promoter, and that worked out.
So do you ever carry business cards? Have you ever used anything like that?
No what?
Business cards?
No.
No?
No, you're my business card,
all right,
and I'll be your business card.
Right, thank you, man.
Business cards, of course, our world today.
Right.
Somebody said, man, can I have your number? Sure. Send me a text. Well,
that's why I ask, because my co-host and I are getting ready to go to NAMM, and just to try and spread the word about the podcast.
Well, you need a business card for that.
Exactly. And I said, do you think we should get business cards? And we had that conversation.
Absolutely.
He goes, I know they're going out, but, I have a box of maybe 500 or 1,000 I bought 10 years ago. I still have them. Yeah,
but what do they refer to? Musicians? Or do they refer to businesses?
Well, right. This one, my personal one, was for me. But it's interesting how I've stayed busy for the last 16 years working, and it's not been with the business card. I guess that was kind of my
Well, it is that. But when you have a venture where you have diversified your life, you want to promote that.
Okay.
And in most people's worlds, if they meet you and you're telling them or describing what your business is, I do podcasts that are like that. Oh, good. Here's my card.
Yeah.
They will take that.
But you're okay. I know what you're saying. Sure, I was trying to make a silly point, but you're telling me that personal musicians, that one-on-one thing, the business card isn't necessarily the thing. It's the word of mouth. It's the relationships. Yeah. That's great. I love that. I wanted to ask about working with certain artists at the beginning of their careers, like George Strait, the Judds, Randy Travis, Terry Clark, and we mentioned Easton Corbin, a newer artist. Was there something about those experiences or something those artists brought to the table that did you hear something that said, this is going to be huge?
I do. I did on the front end of all that.
Yeah.
I remember when I first did the demo that became the records with the Judds, I remember going around because I was working with Jim Ed Norman and doing a lot of the Anne Murrays and all the stuff that I was doing. And I remember I was talking to Jim Ed. I said, have you ever heard of the Judds? He said, no. I said, well, you will.
Yeah.
I knew. It was the same thing. I remember Alan Jackson when we first went in. He had that natural talent in his songs.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember talking to him. I said, Alan, I said, you know, I never step out, but I have to tell you, this is going to be incredible. And I remember his wife saying, oh my God, you really think so? Because I'd really like to quit being a flight attendant. I said, yeah, of course, now they own their own aircraft and everything. So, but I did enjoy watching that happen. And a lot of times within us, we see the uniqueness, even though it might be, yeah, that's a typical country song, you know. There's still something about the artist himself. And it was sort of like even with George Strait, where we would joke, you know, about, you know, seeing him live on a stage. But of course, I mean, you're talking millions and millions of records, but making a joke saying, man, yeah, George, I watched you on that one show, and the way you turned your head away from the mic and brought it back, I said, man, I was just, you know, and he would laugh, he knows.
Right.
But there's something charismatic about everyone, but there's something I think inside of us that can detect that as soon as we hear it and go, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's still possible today? Well,
I think from what we discussed earlier, it is, but now the powers that be have to come into play that are going to have that. Back in that day, labels had the capability of development, and they had the money to do that. Then it became, they don't have the time anymore. And I think when the new A&R departments came out, as far as The Voice and the American Idol and reality shows and stuff like that, plus the embedded managers who had already had success, anybody they took on, they could certainly go over top of people. The only one I know that now is looking in that world is Scott Bruschetta. I know there's been a couple artists, but still, the artist that he would bring in, well, she made the top 5 of Idol, you know. So you're still hearing that rather than a great manager. I think the last one might have came from Van Perry when Bob Doyle brought them in, and he had that power to be able to push it to a label to say, you know, sitting down at the table, I can do this, you know, I can do this. And then they would go, well, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of our work being done.
Yeah.
Where we don't have to worry about the promotion. We do, but not the visual aspect of it, where you can make that happen by putting them in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say it's more infrequent now.
You've won ACM Drummer of the Year 13 times. 14 times. Well, there you go. And 11 times in a row, is that correct?
There was 11 consecutive, because as it was going on, I mean, after a while, even with your own humbleness, after the 10th year, I was going, you know, I'm up there with my colleagues and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so John Briggs and, it was Tim Dubois. They were on the board, and they contacted me, and they said, we need to be able to submit something here, and you've been a board of governor and NARIS and everything, and what your ideas would be. And I said, well, obviously, I'm thrilled with what's happened so far. Who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
And I said, my view would be that we do a one-on, one-off, where if I win this year, I can't be nominated the next year. Then the following year, I could be nominated again. And they said, that is a great idea. So they go back to their committee meetings and everything, wherever they meet. And I'm thinking, so that's fair, you know, that's good. So what happens is I get the nominations, and I'm nominated for the 11th time. And I had to call John and them. I went, what the heck? They said, well, they didn't really put it in place. So I won the 11th year. Then it started alternating.
I see.
And then from that time on, then it was an every 2-year thing, which finally I got to 14.
Okay.
And I've actually talked to them and going, you know, because we started making it more embedded on the RMA, let them be the ones that really look at the frequency recording musicians, you know, to be nominated.
Yeah.
Which my voice on that was that, look, you know, there's so many worthy out there, you know, to do that. And the only other respect to that, and again, not demeaning an accolade, but
sure,
your phone's not going to ring anymore.
Well, and
You know
I guess
what I
that's
mean.
what I was trying to figure out. It's like, well, what kind of question can I come up with regarding some of these accolades? And let me just throw this one out there as well. Drum Magazine putting you in the top 10 of recorded drummers of all time as well. I mean, with amazing company, just. So you're kind of answering a possible question. What does that mean?
I have to say, you know, some people might say, well, you know, you should be grateful. And I said, I am grateful. I said 10 of the whatever they named it, of the something recorded drummers.
Yeah.
I forget the first part of it, but I said, I wish they hadn't said of all time.
Rated top 10 session player of all time by Drum Magazine.
Yeah, I said, you got to leave all time off of that. You know, this life isn't over with yet, and there's plenty of people who are coming up that are achieving everything that I've achieved and probably will go further.
Yeah.
You know, so for this particular time, that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It rules you out of being able to do another one of all time. So you're going to have some more all-timers in there? You know what I mean?
It's pretty amazing, though. It is really amazing.
You know, I can't say that, again, any one of us are honored for that.
Yeah.
But I do take little snips here and there just in logic to be able to say, you know, of all time, I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about your style, and we've had a couple different drummers on here, Greg Lohman, and I'm trying to remember who else, but the open-handed style playing. Does Mark play open-handed as well? Okay. Where did that come from?
You know, I did play conventional, but I had the ambidextrous capability. Mm-hmm. But when I injured my wrist and I was out for 8 months.
8 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
8 months. They had to reconstruct all that. And they put in a scaphoid piece and they pinned that. But for those 8 months.
We're looking at your left hand.
You're looking at the snare.
Yeah.
And I couldn't use the snare anymore for those time if I wanted to work out. So obviously I had to make that a hi-hat.
Yeah.
But I had already been able to go back and forth, and even now today I will do it because I found if I go back to conventional that I play differently. It's a different feel.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you know, but most people sit at and they go, you know, logically that because look at that, you've got all that.
Yeah, you've got room.
You got room to really hit that snare, you know.
So what was that the catalyst? Was the injury the reason?
Well, yeah, that definitely put the.
Yeah.
Made it so.
What year was that?
That was 85.
85. Okay. There's a Modern Drummer Festival that you were on?
Yes. And I'm wearing
Yeah. And that was later. That was.
Oh, yeah, that's later.
Yeah.
I still would have to wear, you know how it is in any breaking injury. There's things that, you know, it becomes all of a sudden the phobia of, was it the weather? Is something that making it hurt, you know?
Yeah.
So, as Barry Beckett always said, it's about the groove.
Yeah.
Now, if you can groove, it doesn't matter if you have a cast on or not, which I did wear a cast playing some great records.
What has changed for you gear-wise?
If you look at the evolution from when I first started, it was acoustic drums.
Yeah.
Then Rafe Van Hoy and Chuck Ainley created triggering off of 57 microphones extra on toms and snare and kick that triggered a Simmons 5. Now, I didn't use the you know, boo, boo, boo. We just used the attack and the noise, like that. So we did the record that way. What happens is Tony Brown hears it, and by the time Tony freaks out over it, then Bowen hears it. Bowen said, I want to know everything about that. Well, what happens is Bowen starts talking to Wendell and getting samples, which at that time, they didn't really have the capability of being right on the money, maybe 15 milliseconds. But all those records I did with Bowen, he would re-trigger sounds, which drove me nuts because I would talk to his engineer when I would hear a record come out. I went, the kick drum is so far behind the beat. I mean, you know, he goes, well, we used an AMS. We put the sample, the Wendell sample on there. When it would get out of sync with it, then we would just record it again. I said, yeah, but even on its own, it was 15 milliseconds behind.
Yeah.
No matter how accurate it was. So,
Right.
So it's hard to listen to those records when I hear them. Maybe it didn't have nothing to do with success, but for me, it was like, oh my God. You know, but from that, then all of a sudden, a lot of us had to be carrying refrigerators around with us. So my refrigerator, I had the Akai sampler, I had D drums, I had a mixer, I had all my triggering specs that I was using from PCMs or whatever I had to trigger my units. And that went on for a while.
Yeah.
And then when they finally got in where engineers were capable of sound replace, you didn't need that anymore.
Yeah.
And then it became a circumstance of loops and things like that, where after a while, of course, radio governing everything would say, no, we don't want to hear any more loops. Okay, the loops are gone. And of course now, not only are loops back, but so is Superior Drummer or any of the other drum creating situations, such as the guy with the Florida Georgia Line who does everything. And of course, Mutt did it with Shania's second record.
Yeah.
That was all program bass and drums.
Wow.
And but now that's just part of our world. So the only thing I would say as far as having that, I think it depends on how you want to diversify your life fiscally. Because when we look at Brewster or Shannon and people like that who can get a file, bring it in, they have everything at their house. They not only have their drums, but they also have creative capability of programming drums, putting a loop on or anything like that. You know, which is, I think probably 3 or 4 of the artists that I know of are using programmed drums and loops. And you can tell it. We can tell it. But the average listener, no, they don't tell it because everything's been audio quantized anyway. So, you know,
even from the original.
But if a drummer has it, I mean, I have Superior Drummer, I have to say, when I'm done with pieces that I do, they're undetectable. They're so well sampled, you know. Which to me, the analogy of that is, you know, when you record a record digitally, it's a sample, right? I mean, your drums become samples. They've been put into 1-0 world. So I could capture any of that, and I've got a sample.
I'll do like a recording and maybe the way it was tracked, or I'll get the record back like you're talking about, and it's like, man, I'm not hearing the toms like I think, you know, I'm listening from a drummer's standpoint, or that's not the take that I thought we were going to use. And so a lot of times you just have to give up the ownership of that performance to the engineer or the producer.
You walk out, you got your money, that's it.
Because you're talking about, what made me think of that is you're saying, oh, that kick drum is, you know, that old sample.
No,
Has that been a difficult thing to manage from time to time when you?
If you know the camp, that really helps. But you don't know after the fact. You don't know what happens after the fact. So by the time the record comes out, you had no way of knowing that they were going to make the bass and the kick drum and the acoustic and all the other things so just net quantized that, you know, you just didn't know. So you really don't have anything, you know, like I say, they called you. So you go in and you sign a card, you get your money, you're gone, and like you said, you leave everything in their hands.
When I was still living in Columbus, I came across Blue Moon Swamp that you recorded with John Fogerty. is there anything that was? I knew there were multiple drummers on that.
Yeah. In fact, even within drummers, there's multiple drummers. We all were Frankensteined.
Okay.
Yeah, there's probably other cuts I was on, but you wouldn't know it.
Huh. Is there anything about that situation that was special, or?
You know, John himself, which when you go back to my Oakland days,
Yes.
I was good friends with his brother when Tom quit the band.
Okay.
And that was a whole imploding that was sad, because Tom was like, it was like the Real Life Smothers Brothers, where Tom went to John and said, you know, I can sing and I can write. Mm-hmm. And John said, well, then we'll go in and we'll cut some of your songs and everything. And Tom said, well, I've already talked to Saul, and he's given me a deal. I'm going to do my own record. And John immediately said, Tom, don't do this. He's manipulating, blah, 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 blah. You know, well, anyway, it broke up their family. It broke up the Creedence circumstance. And then Saul went on to say to Stu Cook and Doug Clifford, I'll pay you millions of dollars to give your right of the name up.
Oh, wow.
So that he would own it,
Yeah.
which they did because they didn't see any future anymore.
Oh.
John took adversity to that, and that's why when they were put on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, John said, if you let them on the stage, I'm leaving. I mean, it continued on, and John had such an unfortunate just PTSD about the whole thing. And being there, I remember being there and even sitting with Tom outside while John was doing his Rangers record and everything on his own, and we would have to wait till he got out of Fantasy, and we would go in and jam and do what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But to watch how that still continued on, of course, when I did his record, and that was still there, still relative.
Wow.
Because I actually inherited it from Picaro. So when I got there, I called Jeff, and I said, what the heck happened? He goes, oh, you're going to see. You're going to find out.
This is in 97?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, oh, you'll see. It'll become evident to you. And I said, well, what happened to you? He said, I had 2.5 weeks of too much. He said, it finally got to the point I didn't know what he wanted. And so when he came in, Jeff said, I actually told the engineer, I said, solo me and the click. And basically he did. And he just put his hands in front of John. He goes, okay, so what's the problem? And John said, that's it. You're done. So I do have to say that after that, I spent 42 straight days.
Wow.
And it was just me and Bob Glavin and John.
Uh-huh.
And you couldn't touch the drums. John had to tune the drums, and they had to be DWs, everything in his court there. Because he could play drums. He did on a solo record.
Yeah.
I just think that with all that torture that went on, and Saul, of course, was the catalyst, because Saul didn't care about Creedence, even though it made him $110 million. Saul condescended to our intellect. He hated Creedence, and he wanted to see that destroyed. I mean, he started Prestige label, had all his jazz and everything, and of course his movies, which are known. I mean, Amadeus, Cuckoo's Nest, English Patient. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
But he still tortured John through the years of suing him. And at that time, there was no frivolous suit law, and so he could sue him, let the legal fees get to $700,000 or $800,000 and drop the case. So John would be liable for that. And he held off John's publishing for all those years. Then finally John wins and gets his retro $18 or $19 million of publishing back. And, you know, but still it never left. It never,
That's amazing. Yeah. So I know that John is a drummer, and I've heard stories of just he can be very meticulous about...
He was meticulous. I have to say, it wasn't in the recording respect of it. It was just in what he finally said he wanted. And when you would go in, he said, man, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And of course, you're just thinking in your mind, thank God, you know, I mean, because me and Glob would do a take and finally just walk up into the lounge up there at the Lighthouse in Studio City there and just sit, you know, because again, it wasn't anything that you could have any power over, and what was in his mind he was looking for. You know,
You say you do a take and then go take a break. Were they just listening?
He would listen. It was all on him. And I remember one particular moment, maybe 2 or 3 weeks into it, that Springsteen came by, and so he comes in and he's looking around the studio. Of course, we're all analog, and he's seeing all these analog reels of tape, you know, around. And he would ask John, he said, how many reels of tape? And John said, probably 400 and something. He goes, John. And John was trying to justify it. He said, well, Bruce, you know what it takes, or like that. And Bruce literally said, John, you need some honest objectivity.
Yeah.
So, you know. But, you know, since then I've worked with John, and he seems a little more even-keeled about everything like that. I do know in the live respect of it, it's still bizarre for the band members, you know, from what I hear.
Okay. Yeah.
You know.
It's interesting. I mean, he's such an iconic artist, and he's influenced so many people.
Well, the thing about him is it's not like anything's degraded. He still sings and plays incredibly.
Oh yeah.
He's on the money. So it's not like we see somebody else who's trying to make something of what he used to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have to say I give him that. And, you know, just for the rest of it, I mean, it's just a sad story of what happened.
And it's not unique. I mean, there are
that happens. Yes,
it's unfortunate that happens.
It is unfortunate,
yeah.
You know, where you get somebody like that with that kind of power to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen it in some of our greatest artists where the label finally comes down and they go, you need to do these songs. You need to like that. You know, Rebecca Lynn Howard, one of our greatest voices.
Yeah.
And I did one of her records.
Right.
And we were doing the song, and they said, no, you need to do this. And just going, oh, my God, that's sad. You know, that somebody like that has the power over unique creativity and individual capability of knowing what to write for yourself.
Yeah.
You know. But the greatest story I saw is I remember, because I did a lot of Vince Gill records, and I did one back when Emery Gordy produced him. Then I did one with Barry Beckett. Yeah. His last efforts on RCA.
Do you remember which one that was?
Well, it never came out.
Oh.
So what happens is we get about 7 or 8 sides into it, but Galani tells Barry, I don't want him recording any of his own songs. We got to record hits. He's got to have some hits. So that went on, and finally Vince will tell the story, even blatantly, where when he went to Barry, he said, what are we going to do? And Barry, F him. That's what he said. So from that, he was off the label. We went in, we did the MCA effort that had When I Call Your Name and everything.
Yeah.
And, of course, that just changed everything.
There was an artist I worked with who was on Warner Brothers, and we're flying to a gig, and she says, I'm really struggling right now. My manager wants me to cut a certain song. I want to cut this other song. The label wants me to cut this other third type of songs, or this set of songs. I just don't know what to do. And I said, well, what if you just kind of did what the label wanted you to do and see where it goes? And she goes, I can't subscribe to that. If I do it on someone else's terms and I fail, then I'm always wondering what would have been. I would rather fail on my own terms. And I don't know, that was the first time I've heard that oftentimes. I've heard that.
Yeah, but see, the thing was, my objective with that would be, if you choose and you say you're choosing to do that, you won't fail on your own terms. They will fail you. They will not allow that to happen. They will negatively promote you.
Yeah, I think that's maybe that was what I was thinking. It's like, but they have the resources to help you become successful. So can you kind of
the more
follow?
Frequency you get out of them, if you play their game, and the more you get out there and have visibility and stuff like that, you can capitalize on that later down the road.
Yeah.
But if you go to a label and they want you to do this and management, all like that. As soon as you say, no, I want to do this on my terms, they're going to go, okay. And they will get together behind doors and they'll crush you. You won't even have a chance to see that what you chose to do come out, because it won't come out.
I know what you're saying.
And if it does come out, they will negatively promote it to the point of being able to say, see, we told you. Because promotion has the power to go to all of their radio stations, everything like that, and not promote the record to them.
Unbelievable. And this was her first effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's...
And last.
With that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You've got to look at the machine and be able to say, look, I will play this game. Strategy.
Yeah.
Let them fulfill everything that they want. Let them do it. Because the one thing about it, while they're putting everything into their belief, you are being seen. You're being heard. Whether it achieves top 10 or top 20, doesn't matter, but you have been heard. You see?
Yeah.
So you will have a life after that.
Right. And then maybe the ability to...
Then you can do what you want. Maybe another label after that doesn't work or anything like that might come in and go, yeah, we really love your voice. We love what we see, and we want to take that on. Once you go against the hierarchy like that, it's over.
Yeah.
Because they have power at that time.
Yeah.
They have the power.
Yeah. Yeah. Just as much now as ever before, you think?
No, I think because now that you have Scott Bruschetta's and some of the other independent labels, even Scott suffered under that when he was A&R over at with Luke Lewis and them at MCA and or Universal, whatever it was. And they were having adversity to him because he knew his world. His father, Mike, everything, he inherited everything. He knew that world out there. He knew what to do. But even other people embedded in that label and everything couldn't take the fact that he was coming up with such objective about specific things that they were choosing to do. Just like if you were that person in there with that artist, to be able to say, you know what, she already has this. So they fired him. And that's when he started Big Machine with Toby Keith. And because he knew what to do. And of course, the story that anybody knows and doesn't know was when he signs Taylor Swift as a teenager, and then Toby drops out. So the money is gone for Scott to be able to fulfill the dream that he knows that he can make happen with. And then, you know, Taylor's father was very, very wealthy in Merrill Lynch and put a little over $1 million into that, and Scott was able to prove his worth.
Right.
And of course now we see.
Right.
But that's the difference, because Scott's one who knows like and thinks like we think.
Yeah.
You see, where the labels, unfortunately, now have inherited specific A&R companies that are more academically minded.
Yeah.
They know nothing of legacy. They know nothing except for the past 5 years of what they hear is what has made it up there. And so if they hear anything different, it'll scare them.
Yeah.
If they hear anything individual walk in the door, oh, no.
But can't they pull from Scott's experience and say, but look, I proved that it can be done?
They can't, because they don't have a biography. That's what Delbert always told me. He has problems with people who don't have a biography. So you got somebody who just got out of school, and all they have is studied the past 5 years. So what else do they know?
Yeah.
There's nothing embedded in them to know that, my God, this is so individually incredible. We need to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They don't have it. It's just not there.
Yeah.
You know? They need to really either that or taking the initiative like we have as musicians and drummers to be able to study back before time of our time and see why these efforts were so big. You know, because otherwise then anything that breaks out becomes a phenomenon. You know, any A in the department will go, yeah, well, Adele was a phenomenon. You know, she just came in with her uniqueness and everything, and that just happened. But yet they'll stay on course with what they consider mainstream to be. Now, that's something that has opened up. In the limited pressing world, the gates have opened so that if a production company has the power and the state-of-art studio, like over at Beard Music, it's incredible. I bet he has sessions going on 3 to 5 days a week, you know. And you'll go in, and in 2 sessions, the goal is 6 songs a session, so somebody can come in and do their record. Plus,
And how long is a session? You're
3 hours.
6 songs in
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yep.
Wow.
And you will see, oh man, who are some of the other people like Greg's always in there with me, Greg Morrow, Chad. Oh man, who is, well, Tommy Harden. But anyway, he spreads the word. So I might have 2 days with him, you know, 1 session each day. And then he just spreads it out. He's done such an incredible job. But his state-of-art studios, these people will come from Texas for their bucket list or their pipe dream or whatever it is.
To
do their record.
To say they did it in Nashville.
No, because where else are they going to be able to have great musicians in that same room?
Yeah.
You know, because I'll be in there with Steve Nathan, I'll be in there with James Mitchell, Brent Mason, JT, Cornfloss, and on bass you could either have Swine or Larry Paxton, Mike Bernardello, and most times it's Larry's son Eli Beard, who's unbelievable. The guy's crazy. But anyway, I'm just saying, the group of musicians in there, and these people know that they can come here, and what he gives them is their album will be done at the end of the day, and then they have 3 days of overdub and mix.
Right.
And they can have all this done, you know,
Yeah.
and they get their record.
Yeah.
So again, somebody who all their life, that's all they've ever wanted to do is maybe there was somebody put it on the back burner after they had family or after they have their work. And now they have the capability of coming out and doing their record.
Yeah.
And of course, the other benefit is somebody can come in on a demo session, you know, like James Slater or Victoria Shah, something like that, and they need 1 song to pitch for next week. They'll get that song done, and it'll be done.
Right. Y'all are there.
And they can pitch it right away.
Right. Exactly. That's awesome.
Where before, it would take 4 or 5 others to get fiscally together, you know, and justify having a studio musicians engineer mix and everything. And everybody have to pool in. This way, for like $700, the writer can come in, get their time of 30 minutes, and go over to the next studio, put their voices on, and do whatever they want. And,
wow, and it's just that.
And it's amazing to see the expedition, because what amazes me, pretty much it's 30 minutes allowed for each song. And somebody could go, wow, 6 songs, but you'd be surprised what gets done within that 30 minutes of that track being done, guitar solos, overdubs, everything, and move on to the next song. Everybody is together. So keen on being able to do it. Now, I have to say, you have to be ready for that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, right, exactly. But it's interesting that you say it's impressive to you.
It impresses me all the time, because I can't believe, you know, how quickly it goes.
Yeah.
But I love it, because it's not only it's brain power.
Yeah.
You know, in 3 hours you've got to do 6 pieces of music, and you have to rise them to that best potential.
Yeah.
It always happens. It amazes me.
Purge the song before we did it. It's time to move on.
Yeah, and the other thing
slate.
is take it from nothing.
Yes.
You know, to getting it, and all the quick editing that's done within from all of us, you know, who said, hey, what if we just do this and this and this? And it just gets done. Yeah. And I've got many, many efforts that I get after the fact, and it sounds competitive. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
So there's always a lot of that.
Yeah. How far are you booked out?
Usually it's about, unless it's a fluke, 2 weeks.
Okay.
Everybody's pretty fast on, you know, not looking at you. I might have one thing next month that has been booked. But I think everybody is so knowing now, again, that our rosters are so compatible that they don't have to say, I have to book this to get what I want. Because then again, they can get everything they want compatibly, you know, that if I can't do it for when they call. And the other thing that's incredible is that I have to stay on top of this guy.
Oh,
because I might get a text.
You're pointing at your phone here.
Yeah. I might get a text and they go, are you open tomorrow at 2:00?
Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
I remember in 92 or 93, with all of my connection with Winona, she needed a drummer live. So we set up down at SIR and had an itinerary of people coming through. The thing that was a great awakening to me was to see all the different, they're all great drummers, but how they thought would be translating of energy. And it was amazing. They would play the songs, you know, she wasn't there, we just played with the band. But how they translated it, and I mean, I've never heard so many chop licks in all my life. You know, just going, no, that has nothing to do with the music, you know. But I was obviously yeah, that's really great, you can do that, but, you know, did you really listen to the song? Did you listen to the record? You know, and they would just do things that they thought was the impressive of, even if I was there, to show me that that's energy, which it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think at the end of 3 days, this guy named Steve Potts comes in. Steve Potts was with Booker T.
Oh, wow.
And still is, I think, Booker T and the MGs. He came in and, man, just laid it down. I mean, just straight pocket, you know. Nothing fancy and everything like that.
Yeah.
He gets a gig.
Yeah.
He was with it for a long time, you know. But it was, to me, and if you're put in that position, you would see what I'm saying.
As I was going through your list of credits, I came across records that you had played with artists that I've worked with over the years. And I know that I'm not unique in that situation. So many of us in the drumming community, especially in Nashville, have learned your parts, have, you know, learned the song from your performance.
Oh.
And I think it has influenced so many of us. And I just kind of wonder how that feels, like knowing that there's a lot of players downtown, on tour, wherever, that are playing what you played. And maybe some of what you've done, your style has influenced. It has influenced my style, my approach to a song. So I guess on behalf of a lot of the players in town, appreciate you taking the time, talking to me, kind of giving us some insight. But,
you know, that is appreciative. And the great thing is to me, I've been such an advocate of being able to pass torches and being able to mentor and do things. If there's anything, whether it's something I played on or whether it's something I could say or anything like that, to be able to help, that's my place now.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
I'm still amazed that I work every week in the studio. That's amazing after 42 years. But I mean, it's still something that, if there's anything that I have done, there's a lot of stuff locked up in all of us. And if there's something from a question which you have been able to do that unlocks that, then that's great. Because, and I would want that even openly if anybody wanted to contact me. And because I've heard every scenario from people who have written me over the years, and it involves not only just the musicality, but the personal life aspect of how they've gone through things in their life.
Oh, yeah.
That could be inhibiting them in specific areas and stuff like that. Even down to the point of where people have gotten in bands where, unfortunately, the guy who's in power in that band doesn't know how to play in a pocket if you try to get him to, and complaining about you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And for that, I have to be able to keep you strong, to be able to say, look, you know. Anyone else, if you put it before any of us, you say, man, the guy just rushes like crazy and he doesn't feel, but yet he has the power to be able to blame it on you. You can't internalize that.
Yeah. All of the different outside influences as you go through life, family, kids, different types of gigs, different types of bosses.
Yeah.
That you have to overcome and get it together. And if this is what your calling is, then you have to learn how to manage those everyday trials to deliver the best performance you can.
That's it.
For the situation.
That's what you're called to do.
Yeah, exactly. Eddie, I appreciate it so much, man. Thanks, man.
It's been great.
So there's my interview with Eddie. I really appreciate him taking the time coming to my house to talk about all these things, many non-drum related stuff. Hopefully anybody that's interested in what goes on in the music business and recording and getting singles, maybe that just kind of open up a whole new world for you. I want to send out a special thank you to some of my friends that I reached out to before I sat down with Eddie. I wanted to be more than prepared. So thanks goes out to Lee Kelly, Mark Beckett, Josh Berkheimer, my friend Don Gatlin for giving me some ideas on what to pitch towards Eddie. My thanks always goes to Mike Jackson for his technical help. Stay tuned for Zach Albetta's interview next week. And again, thanks for everyone's support, listening, your input, your comments. Use the hashtag Working Drummer. We'll find you out there. Share your picture, share your story. Just appreciate the interaction and the listening and the support. So keep on listening, and I hope to see you around. Thanks. Bye-bye.